go to a comedian concert or a comedian show. That was vile, but anyhow, but he's very funny. And then we drove home last night, and we got home at 11:30. We went to the early show, so we were at the Majestic. We went to a show at 7, and then came home last night. So we got home about 11:30, 11:45.
Yes, we drove home.
Mary, we're not able to hear you as well as we are Scott right now. You can move your mic up a little.
That's sheer disgust my husband is showing.
So they recommend those defibrillators in case anything goes wrong with your heart. I'd be scared to have one in our house, honestly. So I'll just take my chances on heart failure.
Why, because Mariel's after you, or what?
Well, if it's technology of any sort, you know, we all have our strong and weak points, and I'm happy to tell you mine. But this one is hers. And so
I pressed the button again. I turned it off. Sorry. Okay.
So we on record?
We are on record.
So I'm gonna go a little different direction here at the start because it's important. And I'm gonna start out. I'm gonna tell you a story. Years ago, we went to a church that has an annual chili cook-off. Okay, chili cook-off. Can you hear me? Carol can't hear me unless I pitch my voice up kind of high. I'm gonna do my best to be. They have a chili cook-off, and so I made, in addition to chili, I made a sheet. It was supposed to be funny. It was funny, but it had stuff on there like chili it comes from Texas. Everything else is just spicy tomato soup. Okay. And I said, chili has meat, it has no beans, stuff like that. I mean, but it was like a top 10 countdown. And one of the women from the church ambushed me. And she was so angry, she was shaking. And she dressed me down for quite a while over my insensitive thing that I had written that I thought was so ridiculously, you know, it had to be a joke. But we as the body can be better than that, okay? And that's just one of those examples that we have a place with each other, and to get so upset that, I mean, her lips were shaking, not just her hands. She was angry because I think, you know, I said that chili is red and her chili was green. I really do. I think that was what tore it. Yeah, you know, I mean, it was not intended to be anything other than just something lighthearted, but those are the things. And this week, 2 things have come really, really clear, and that's one of them. As the body, we can be different than that. We should be different than that. And just, I guess it was last week or the week before, Jesus talks to him. He says, the people, he says, but it's not going to be that way with you. You're not going to be that way. And this is part of our job. And I'm going to get to that because that's the other thing that came clear is about our job. But I want to, hi there. I want to read something to you. I last week, we didn't know about this in time for our prayers, but Virginia wrote, and we've talked about Kelly, our friend Kelly. She lives in Canada.
She's been online a couple of times.
She's been online a couple of times. It's hard because of her connection speed and other things, but she's still part of us. And last week we got this word that one of her, maybe her best friend, they grew up together. The friend and her family went to the Dominican Republic right before New Year's for a short vacation, and they came back, and they came down with what they said was food poisoning. I don't know if you really know that, but her 7-year-old son died within an hour. She died about an hour later, and this is Kelly's very close friend, died about an hour later. The other son and the husband wound up surviving it and were preparing to fly home when we got our last word. I haven't heard directly from Kelly, but it is, you can imagine the devastation to the family, but also to Kelly. One was maid of honor in the other's wedding, you see how these happen. And it's hard when we're on Zoom because we have people that, we can't go to their house. We can't, but that's the thing. But I have to think that there are ways that we can at least be of some support. Keep Kelly in your prayers. Keep the family in your prayers. Pardon me, I can't imagine coming back from that vacation and all of a sudden, two family members died, no doubt from something that happened there. So those are the things, and we have, Mary and I, as it happens, there are a whole lot of people that are either directly or sort of peripherally involved with this group, with this, body that's here, that have a lot of these kinds of things, a lot, maybe not that extreme, but keeping each other in our prayers is a really, really big thing. And then
Scott, I
today,
hate to interrupt.
yes,
The whole family was in the Dominican Republic. They got sick with food poisoning while they were there. They were taken to a hospital there where the mom, Kelly's friend, and the 7-year-old died. So that's it. I'll turn myself off now. That just a
Okay, no,
mind for me.
I appreciate it. It sounded like from the email that they had come home, but so then they were in the Dominican, and that flight was a flight back from Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, the question comes up about this, being so far separated from each other. But our prayers, and that's what Kelly asked for. So don't forget her, and don't forget the family. We have some others. Alton and Kathy. Kathy is not here. Alton is not doing well. They replaced their king size bed with a medical, hospital bed this week. That's usually not a good sign. And Kathy is overwhelmed, I think. Kathy is tired. We do what we can, and bring meals and go by and everything, but she is really, really struggling. So keep Kathy and Alton.
And their daughter's in town this weekend. She came in on Thursday and leaving mid next week, I guess, and trying to get some more help for Kathy. But pray for both Kathy and Alton.
Alton has reached that point. He's sort of traveling through time. He doesn't know if it's now or if it's 30 years ago. He recognized me and was talking to me, and he said, "That's when you used to live down on the coast." And so he thinks he's somewhere other than down on the coast. So and it is taking a toll on Kathy. It's very, very hard. So remember them. And Cherie and Phil, our friends, a lot of you know them, a lot of you don't. But Phil is also, really not doing well. You can help me with this.
Oh, and continue to pray for Cisco, whose husband Gary passed away on the 30th of December, and she has not only the grief of losing her husband, but a lot of things to unwind, and it's a lot of work. And then our daughter's still not doing well, and pray that this medicine that she just got put on starts working.
It seems to have had some. I mean, she was so bad, but there's an improvement. But still, for most people, what she's living with right now would be pretty bad. But it's better for her, and what we want to see is continued improvement. And then there's our son.
Yeah, and just he's on the streets in San Antonio. Pray that he goes into a shelter today.
Yeah, that he can put down his pride or whatever it is and go to a shelter instead of staying out in that cold. So, and I know there are probably others. I apologize, but people now come to us often and ask for prayers and prayers from this group. And we a lot of the time say, "Oh yeah, we will," and then we don't. And it's important. God, we're thankful for your hand. We're thankful for the gift that you give us of being part of a body. We recognize that it was important, and it is important, and that we have a place in it. These that we have prayed for, we asked for healing. Sometimes it's physical, and sometimes we know that that's not the plan. That's not where this goes, but you can bring comfort, and you do. We sometimes have to open our eyes to it, but that's what we ask for is where the outcome isn't what we want, that we open our eyes and our heart to the comfort from you, but also for us, the reminder that we have the ability to be part of that comfort. We have a task, and the reminder of it when the opportunities come up, that we don't close our eyes. This study today is important and difficult, and we ask for your guidance that we get the right message. Amen.
Okay, so where do we leave off? We are on week 25 of Matthew, and we left off in Matthew 24. Remember, Jesus is in Jerusalem for the last time. We'll find out later in today's lesson, perhaps, that it's probably the Wednesday before the Friday where he is crucified. So just a couple of days. And it's amazing to me how many chapters in the Bible or in the book of Matthew are really that last week, and how much teaching was done that last week of his life. He's on the Mount of Olives now. He is, had the debate and sort of won with the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the scribes. And now he has left the city of Jerusalem and just walked outside of the city to the Mount of Olives. And he is talking to his disciples. And we started last week where he is giving them prophecy, which, some of his lessons that he has taught them with parables, etc., were difficult, but these prophecies must have been very difficult for them to understand. And you realize, Matthew wrote down these things 30 years later. So understanding, then figuring out what they meant, they still probably didn't know. Thoughts?
No, Mary brought it out. This is the last few days. And as most of you would do, if you knew you only had a few days, you'd probably gather the people you love and not only spend time, but say, hey, there's a few things I'd kind of like to leave you with. And we see that happening, or a few things. And the urgency of this is a whole lot more than our own would be. We see a lot of that at the Last Supper table. But he is telling them things. And this is prophecy. But the thing I want to get across, and I'm going to ask Mary to skip forward, because this suddenly has kind of become clear this week. This is end time stuff, right? But it isn't really. It is enough to tell them things that they wonder about, and to tell them, you know what, it's going to be okay. This is gonna get much worse, but I'll be back, and it's going to be okay. But the message of this is not so much about the end times. It's necessary, but what he tells them is, you get all wrapped up in the end time stuff, and what you need to do is be vigilant. You need to be about your business. You need to not spend all your time worrying about the end time stuff, because you've got something to do. And it becomes more and more apparent. And I went to Revelation, some this week, and I'm taking it to the Greek, and I'm working, and there's all of this cryptic stuff. And the reason I always avoid it is because I don't know, what would I do with that information if I knew exactly perfectly what it's saying? What would I do about it? And I already know what I need to do about it. So get about your business, and it's enough to know that God knows. It's enough to know that there's a plan for it. But what really came out to me this week was he's telling them some things. He's telling, and no doubt us, some things, because the things that he talks about can't possibly happen in one lifetime. But he's telling us some stuff. But the real message is, you got work to do. And there's a point in here, the point where he says, if the homeowner knew, yeah, we're going to go there, because this really, when you boil down this whole week, even though there's a lot of end time stuff, he tells them, if the homeowner knew
Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day on which the Lord will come. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm in 24, chapter 24, verse 42. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day on which your Lord will come. But understand this, if the homeowner had known in which watch of the night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. For this reason, you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect.
So that I wanted to go there because that really sums up what this is about. It's not about end times prophecy. He says if the homeowner had known exactly when the thief was going to come, he would have been paying attention and he wouldn't let the thief come in and rob the house. And the inference here is that some, parable homeowner wasn't keeping watch and a thief came and stole stuff. And it says if the homeowner had known exactly when it was going to happen, then he could have been lax before, he could have been lax after, and he would just set up for that 1 hour, and the bad thing would, this wouldn't have happened to him. That's the message. Keep that in mind as we go back now and read this end time stuff, that over and over through this process of teaching them, what he's telling them is, you don't know the hour or the day. Don't sit and try and figure it out. What would you do with that information if you knew? And the answer is that a whole lot of us would just say, well, hey, I don't have to do anything until the last minute. I'll just, if it's going to be however many years from now, I can do whatever I want to do. I can not do what I'm supposed to do. And then just before that, I'll take care of business. That's what he's telling them. That's exactly it, because humans, for whatever reason, get hung up in this end time stuff. And you have to ask why. Why are we so diligent about trying to figure out the hour and day of the end times, and not so diligent about figuring out a whole bunch of other stuff? So let's go back now. I'm sorry. Thanks for tolerating me, but I don't want to get so bogged down. This is clearly prophecy, but don't get bogged down in that part without understanding. You'll see that right there is what he's teaching them with this.
So we'll go back to chapter 24, verse 15, where we left off last Sunday. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination of desolation described by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop come down to retrieve anything from his home, and let no one in the field return for his cloak. How miserable those days will be for pregnant and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not occur in the winter or on the Sabbath. For at that time there will be great tribulation, unmatched from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be seen again. In those days had not been cut short. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect.
If that were possible.
If that were possible. See, I have told you in advance.
So first, we're going to talk about these signs, these things that people are going to see as the last day approaches. And he says, when you start seeing certain things, you're going to know that it's getting closer. But he says, if people come to you and say, oh, look, he's out in the wilderness, don't be fooled. And you think, well, how do you know not to be fooled? And he says, the elect, you can't fool them because they recognize it. But I'll tell you, this is going to be one of those days, and I'm sorry, but I've floundered my whole life. I mean, my whole life. And you go out and they hide in the sand and you stick them with a gig, and we had a boat and everything. What we found was that we would get there right after dark. And we're so excited. We're gigging shells, we're gigging dark spots in the sand, we're gigging, seagrass, all this stuff, and coming up empty. And then you see a flounder, and instantly you realize that was dumb. None of those other things were flounder, right? Until you see a real flounder, everything looks like a flounder, right? We see signs all the time, and we think, oh, this has got to be the end. This has got to be that. And the point I want to make is that when it's the real thing, and we're told through a lot of what he's going to teach, when it's the real thing, you're going to know. All right. There are going to be things that are like birthing pains leading up to it. But when the real time comes, everybody's going to know. So there was I know what the one other thing. He says the abomination that causes desolation. There is this thing mentioned way back in Daniel, and it's mentioned way forward in John's Revelation, and it's mentioned here. Jesus says this abomination that causes desolation. Abomination is a great sin. It is something that is vile, unthinkable. It is great sin. And desolation means something that has been destroyed, emptied out, laid waste to. And we don't know exactly what that is. It's mentioned, and we can speculate. And I'm doing this much because I know people wonder about it, and you will hear other people talk with great confidence that this is what this is. But there's a mention in Revelation that you all know about the mark of the beast, right? And it says at one point that the human number of the beast is 666. And I'm going to tell you my opinion, my belief on that, because it will maybe make some other things make sense. In the Bible, there are numbers that at times are very significant. And you understand the number 3 is representative of God, of perfection, right? 3 is perfection and God. 6 tends to be imperfection and man. And the number 6, repeated 3 times, I believe, is man trying to set himself up as God. We see when we're suddenly talking about artificial intelligence and things like that, a whole bunch of other things, the possibility of something like that occurring. But the abomination of desolation, I believe, is going to have probably something to do with man attempting to be God. And on this earth, for a time, having such control over people that they become, or this becomes their God, literally. So that's enough of that. There's a whole name for this. It's called eschatology. It's end time study. And there are people who dedicate their life to studying the end times. And we're sitting here being told, you don't know, okay? You don't know. So I'm sorry, let's move on. I want to give you enough of that.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
so it's on. So, yeah, I have several points here, I guess I want to make or clarify from you. So, first of all, the abomination of desolation, my understanding is that's when the Antichrist goes into the temple and declares himself as God.
Something in that neighborhood,
Okay.
yes.
So that's pretty desolate abomination. Secondly, when he's saying here about the abomination of desolation, and he's saying about that the destruction will not occur for the elect. First of all, my understanding again is that we're not going to be here because we're going to be
It's
raptured.
my understanding as
Okay.
well.
So is the elect talking about the 12,000 from each of the tribes, the 144,000?
I don't, there's so much in Revelation that is symbolic that I just am cautious about even saying that it's 12,000 from each tribe. I mean, numbers mean things, but there's a point, since I told you I read Revelation this week, there's a point where it appears what's being said is, you remember I said that Jesus comes in the fullness of time. God does things in his time. And the priesthood the temple has become utterly corrupt. There is nothing to salvage there anymore. And when it gets to that low point, it's time for him to come and begin the new thing. Okay. What I read in Revelation is that there reaches a point where there are no new believers. And it actually, what it says is pretty clear about that the opportunity for anyone else to come, to God through Jesus, through the time is past. This is now the fullness of time. So you asked, I'm going to tell you what I believe that I read this week is that there comes a time when there are no new believers coming. And now it's the fullness of time for him to come back. And you see a symmetry between what I told you about when he came and what I say about the priesthood is true. That part's accurate. And to me, that says that it's now time for him to come. This time in the future has become so godless that no one else is coming. And now it's the fullness of time for him to return. That's my best answer. I am not saying it with such confidence like people do that I know the answer, but I'm trying to give you because we worry about this stuff.
So is your belief like what I believe is that when the last Gentile gets saved is when the rapture occurs, and thereafter, I guess we fall in line to what you're saying, that there's no more chances for any people to come to God, and then we go into the tribulation and eventually the great tribulation.
There is a time, and it's sort of referenced in here today, but what we're told in Revelation is that there comes a time, and it says times and half a time. That's 3.5 years. It's half of a 7-year period. When what I believe is being said is that God turns it over, this earth, to sort of bear witness to what it would be like, what it would have been like without him. He removes himself and his influence, and things become horrific. What you refer to as tribulation and all that, yes. I mean, people they love to come up with names, but the fundamentals of it, it appears from Revelation that he says, okay, for this season, and it talks about years, but there are weeks, but they're weeks of years. For this half of a week, for this season, God removes himself and says, now, this is what it would have been like. And it's horrible. It's horrible. So yes, I believe that. I am so, I don't want to get bogged down in this stuff, but I know people wonder, and you've seen movies and you've seen all this. This is my best stab at it. But I look for the fundamentals. I want to look at what does all that mean for us? Not a heck of a lot. And let's get to that, because that's the real message for the day.
Verse 26. So if they tell you, there he is in the wilderness, do not go out. Or here he is in the inner room, do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the power of the heavens will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other.
That heavens word is cosmos. And here's something Mary and I studied while we drove up to San Antonio yesterday. And I mentioned these people that talk with such great confidence that they know exactly what's going on during this time. And I said, I would like to ask them one question. Where are all the people who've already died at this moment? And when you have an answer for that, then come back and tell me you have an answer for this. Until that, you know that we can only understand, we're told we see as through a glass dimly. We see in part. Later on, we'll see in whole. So the people that want to tell you, I know exactly what this is, I would treat that just like his warning that when people say he's out in the wilderness, don't go. And when people tell you, I know exactly what this is, step lightly, because a whole bunch of them do. And I think what we're taught here is not only they don't, we aren't meant to. And we still haven't gotten to the real lesson. Let's go on.
Verse 32. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the branches become tender and sprout leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you will know that he is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away.
So there's that one sentence that hangs people up. And there is so
Truly,
much.
I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened.
And some people like to say that he was telling them that their generation would not pass away, and that's a mistake. And if he makes a mistake, he's not really God, and incarnate. He's not the Son. And I have read so much on one sentence till I'm just sick of it. All right. What I think is most likely is that he's talking about when these things happen, you'll know. Remember the idea, he says that just like the lightning starts on one side of the sky and the other, one instant it's not there, the next instant it is. And everybody knows, right? And then he says the fig tree. You want to know when summer is coming? Well, you know enough. Go check a fig tree. If the branches start getting soft, you know summer's pretty close. And that analogy says, when you see these signs, when people see these things happening, and they see the abomination that causes desolation, I'm right at the door. I'm close. And this generation won't pass away. So when the time comes, it's going to happen fast. It's not going to be something where, it takes forever. And remember just a few verses ago, and I meant to bring that up. It's a funny thing. He says, if this time had not been cut short.
If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short.
And you notice he speaks in the past tense about something that's going to happen in the future. This happens with prophecy a lot. Actually, very often that we see a prophet that is saying about something in the future, speak about it in the past tense. Because I guess when something gets revealed to you that way, and it is that certain, the timing on it, it is already accomplished in their minds. But whatever the reason is, prophecy speaks this way often. It speaks of something to happen in the future as if it's already happened, because it has. That's what prophecy is about. So remember, he says if the time hadn't been cut short, it would have been too horrible. But for the sake of the elect, it's cut short. So when he says that when these signs come, the end is close. It's not something that's going to drag on for an eon. It's going to happen fast when the time comes. I don't think this is a mistake of him saying, you know what, this is going to happen before any of you die. Because there are other places where he tells them they're going to die, this generation. So that's the best I got on that. If that sentence hangs you up, that's my best explanation. You can go out and get 100 different explanations if you want to use Google.
Verse 36, now we get to the thing that really we need to pay attention to.
Now we get there.
No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they were oblivious until the flood came and swept them all away. So will it be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day on which the Lord will come. But understand this, if the homeowner had known in which watch of the night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. For this reason, you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of his household to give the others their food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly I tell you, he will be put in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant.
Let's stop right there, because I really want to get this. And if you don't hear anything else, hear this. He talks about it's going to come. Nobody's going to expect it. Have any of you ever had a flat tire? You've had a flat tire. Have any of you ever not been surprised by it? If you knew when the flat tire was going to happen, you would have probably dealt with it before it went flat. This is all the same kind of a thing. He's saying you're not going to know. People are going to be caught. I mean, they just aren't going to be expecting it. And people try and go out and find a way to expect it. There's no way. But listen to what he says. Read the part about the servant again, please, if you would. Thank you.
Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day in which Lord will come. But understand this, if the homeowner had known, I'm sorry. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of his household to give the others their food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns.
That's good enough. So the idea is that these wealthy, landowners have servants, and they have to go away on business. We're seeing that in parables many times. And they have a steward. They have a kind of a chief servant who's left in charge of things. And notice what he says. The faithful servant who's given the job of feeding the other ones at the right time, of taking care of all the other ones and overseeing the master's business, right? That's our job. That's us. And he says, who's the faithful servant? The one who's been left behind to do this. And he says, blessed is the one that's doing that. When the master comes back, finds that servant doing what he's been tasked with doing. You don't know when. You don't know when the master is coming back. So, and I hate this. Growing up in Texas, we have all these goofy sayings and stuff. But there was always this one, and it gets more meaningful the older I get. Never mind if the horse goes blind, just load the wagon. I remember being a kid and thinking, okay, I don't know. But the idea is, I'll do the thinking around here. You do your job. Don't try and worry about stuff. I'll worry about whether the cart's overloaded. You do your job. And this teaching that he's given to them and he's giving to us says, blessed is that servant who's been left in place to feed the other servants, to take care of the master's business, that when the master returns, he finds that servant doing his job. That's what that says. That's us.
Verse 48.
Mario's got something. Your mic on?
Tell me what you interpret from 40 and 41, please.
40, 41. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left.
I'm almost tempted to say no.
No to what?
Because, and tell you, but the thing I want you to get is that, yeah, I'm going to get to John Paul too. This is in the context of a place where he's saying nobody knows the hour of the day. And the idea of one will be taken and another will be left, I know goes with eschatology and end time studies and the rapture, and some people will be taken and some people will not. Mario, I mean, we can sit down and have lunch and we can talk about that. And I'm telling you, I have this real strong feeling for me personally that if I get wound up in that too tightly, I lose this other part because I've got business to take care of. I have people to watch out for.
So the other part then would imply, if, because you said earlier that you believe in the rapture.
I do.
Okay. So if there's someone left behind, and I can possibly understand the meaning, I guess, if you're unfortunate enough to be left behind in one sense of the word, because you're going to go through the tribulation, but yet you're there because there will be people who will survive the tribulation.
True.
There's no doubt about that.
144,000.
Well, the 144 are there to help spread the word to the Jews, because the tribulation is really for the Jews. That's what it's meant for. The Gentiles who did not get saved, they didn't make it, you know?
We are utterly lost here.
Yeah.
You and I will discuss this if
Okay,
you're
all right,
willing.
never mind.
But here's the thing. When I did what I did in corporations, I would have CEOs and CFOs and people go and say, I want you to design this dashboard where I get real-time updates on sales and everything else. And I said to them more than once, and this is what's known as a career limiting move, what would you do with that information if you had it? What would you do with it? You can't react to sales on a minute by minute basis because people come in at a regular, I mean, you can't do it. So you want to spend not only a lot of time and money, but then you're going to waste your time watching something that you can't do anything about. And I just, basically said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that to you, because you're going to look at that as if you're going to rely on it, and you can't possibly do anything. You can't rely on it because you can't react. And what I'm going to say about all of the stuff, we're given information about end times. We're given Daniel, we're given Jesus, we're given John's revelation. But I know enough to know that a lot of things are symbolic, and it's a risky business to try and take something. You can get an overall sort of feel for what's going to happen. To get down into the specifics, I'm reluctant, and I will tell you there are things that I believe about it, but I'm not going to sit here and tell other people this is exactly it. There are times where I speculate, and I tell you I am. We're missing the point, though, that this is going to happen, but your job is to be vigilant right now, here and now. Your job is to feed the others. He tells Peter, you're going to fall away, but when you come back, strengthen your brothers. That's our job. And I can't make any stronger point. This is going to come through in this chapter today over and over if we can get to it. John Paul?
Well, I've always had the sense
Is your mic on?
that he was talking to them, but he's talking to us, and he's talking to every person individually. You don't know the hour and you don't know the time. One will be taken, one will be left. All those things. The end time comes to all of us
Well, that's true.
at
That's
any
interesting.
moment.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is, yes, the earth will end. Don't worry about that. Worry about right here, right now, because you don't even know if you have the next moment and the next breath guaranteed to you.
It's a point.
That's a good point.
And so it's all, to me, when these guys start doing all this stuff, they should put up a sign that says fortune tellers, because they don't know, and they're selling books and they're selling stuff. And what he's saying is, don't worry about all that. You're mortal. You're going to pass away. And the elect, you want to be on that side no matter when the end time comes to you. It could come to you while I'm speaking to you. And so he's trying to get, to me, I've always read, he's telling us about the immediate of your life at this moment. And when he says one will be taken, one will be left, what is he describing? To me, he's describing Calvary. He's describing on the cross.
We
Two
agree.
guys were up there. One went with him, the other one didn't.
Well, that certainly is a model for that. Yeah. And what Mario was saying, I believe, is substantially correct. The best we understand is there will be a time where there will be people taken and others left. There are things in Revelation that say that the time for people to become believers is not over, because it specifically says at a certain point they quit. But we're lost when we start going too deeply into that. We miss the point. And this is the first one. We need to get to the others. But he says the servant who's been left in charge of the master's business to feed the other servants. Take that message. That's our job. And blessed is the servant when the master does come back. And maybe that's just our end, finds us doing our job. Yeah, let's go with the next part. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Isn't the message, you know, if you believe all the time, you have nothing to be worried about?
If you believe all the time, you have nothing to be worried about. Nothing to be worried about is an ongoing thing.
Because
Fe-
it's like a fear-based thing that people are.
And
worried
what do we tell you? What do I tell you a lot? The angels come and they say, don't be afraid. And we're told at other places, we're not supposed to have to live in fear. We don't have to live in fear. Understanding that is part of the key to realizing it, to being able to not live in fear. Fear is a destroyer for us, because when you live without fear, it changes the way you behave. Yeah, let's,
Verse 48. But suppose that servant is wicked and says in his heart, my master will be away a long time. And he begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day he does not expect, and an hour he does not anticipate. Then he will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
sort of a mixed metaphor. The whole cutting in pieces thing is something they relate to. I mean, they understand. But you notice he talks about a servant that says, you know, he's been away a long time, and he's probably going to be away a lot longer time. So really, I can just fool around. I mean, I can just do whatever. If I know he's coming back, I'll clean up from last night's party and hide all the cans and everything, and I'll get things in shape, and I'll tell everybody, you better not mention that I've been abusing you. And that's what he's saying. The master comes back and finds this, because that person has been tasked with taking care of the other servants, and instead uses his position to take advantage of them. We see that it's easy for me to go to televangelists that take advantage of people. Instead of taking care of them, they have private jets, and it's easy to knock them because they're an easy example to give you. But you've been left here with this duty of taking care of the others, and then you say, well, it's been 2,000 years. It's probably going to be another long time. I don't see it. And so you just go do other stuff. This whole teaching to them and to us is, you got a job to do. You need to be vigilant. You need to be taking care of business.
And then he gives another example. We're on chapter 25, and he starts with some parables. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but did not take along any extra oil. But the wise ones took oil in flasks along with their lamps. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish ones said to the wise, give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out. No, said the wise ones, or there may not be enough for both of us, for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves. But while they were on their way to buy it, the bridegroom arrived. Those who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the other virgins arrived and said, Lord, Lord, open the door for us. But he replied, truly I tell you, I do not know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour.
Start with the last sentence. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. This whole, parable analogy of the 10 virgins is another thing that people do commentaries on, and they dig into. I don't know the relationship between the 10 virgins and the bridegroom in the analogy. What happens, what they're there for, I don't need to know, right? I just don't. Because you can see what he's telling them is that there are people who are taking care of business now and they're prepared. He keeps telling them you need to be vigilant. And half of them were. And the other half weren't. And there comes a point when they're left behind. And the wise ones, and I'm gonna upset some of you again. Last week I told you that the word Matthew uses for foolish person is moroi, it's moron. This Greek, talking about the 10 or the 5 unwise virgins, is literally idiot. It just is. And if you don't like it, go tell Matthew or something sometime. He's saying this is what Jesus said. The point is, they are foolish to the extreme for not being prepared for what happens. They think, he's been gone, and whatever, it's not going to matter. In fact, if he comes past daybreak, I don't even need any oil. I don't need a lamp, and it's close. Why should I worry about it? The parallel that he's saying for people like us is you get lax because you think, I got a lot of time. And the foolish virgins say, well, at the last minute, we'll go buy some more oil. We got time to make up for this. And they go and they get back too late. The point is, kind of what I heard a while ago is that we don't know that we have another day. We don't know that we have an opportunity to make up for today's lack of preparation, lack of taking care of business. It's one of the things Mary will tell you, I believe very strongly in. We're not guaranteed any number of days. So how many of these can we afford to waste? It is a big sort of motivator in my life. How many days can I afford to toss off, right? That's what he's saying. You want to cut things down to the fine edge and say, all right, when the time comes, I'll get busy. When it becomes obvious that I need to, I'll feed, I'll nurture my brothers and sisters. This whole teaching is don't do that.
Do the parable itself?
Yes.
Okay. Verse 14. For it was just like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them with his possessions. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. The servant who had received the 5 talents went at once and put them to work and gained 5 more. Likewise, the one with 2 talents gained 2 more. But the servant who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned to settle accounts with them. The servant who had received the 5 talents came and presented 5 more. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. The servant who had received the 2 talents also came and said, Master, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Finally, the servant who had received the 1 talent came and said, Master, I know you're a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what belongs to you. You wicked, lazy servant, replied the master. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received it back with interest. Therefore, take the talent from him and give it to one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. But the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw that worthless servant into the outer darkness, where he will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
So understand he's trying to illustrate something. Understand that you see at the beginning a master, the Lord, leaving certain people in a position of taking care of his business, right? It's a consistent theme in this chapter, in this teaching. And the first one is given 5 talents. It's a lot of money. 5 talents of we presume of gold, but a lot of money. And that servant doubles up. That's the Jewish dream, right? Is actually a triple or a quad would be better, but we doubled up your money. But he says, the master comes back and says, okay, what did you do with the work I left for you? And he says, look, I doubled it up. And then another one only had 2 talents. And one of the things I want to get across from this is that when I was young, I had people tell me you're destined for big things. And I believed it. And I was a lousy person for trying to pursue that. And I got beaten down for it numerous times. And the explanation was clearly, you're destined for small things. And it took a while for me to understand that the small things often are the big things. And so a lot of people get hung up in, I want to do something big. If I'm going to do something for God, if I'm going to do my duty or do my job, I want it to be something big. I want to start a program. I want to, whatever. And so in this example, you have someone who's capable of dealing with 5 talents and putting it to work and getting a return on it. And you have another one who's given 2, and that person works and gets a return on it. And I want you to notice that they're both treated the same. They're both cheered, if you will, just as much. It's the widow's mite, the woman who puts the 2 little coins in. And he says she's given more than these people who gave a lot. It's okay. A lot of the things that we're given to do are small things, and it's okay. So the first part of this is for us to see that some people get given a lot. And then there's this last one who gets 1, probably for good reason, probably would not have handled 5 any better. But that's their place in things. And this person, when the master comes back, says, Lord, I knew you're a hard marker. You're tough. You reap where you don't sow. Well, yeah. And you see later, he says, yeah, that's exactly right. I leave you to do that. Of course I do that. You knew that. And this guy goes and buries his gift. It's not really a gift. He's a steward, but he buries the treasure that he has, and just says when the master comes back, look, I still got what you gave me. Yeah, that's us. You see what he's trying to tell us not to be is that you have work to do, and just saying, hey, I didn't make things worse. I don't know. I hate to make some of these examples if I have a good one, but there are things that we say, oh, look at those people at the bad things they do, right? And he didn't say, look, at least I don't do that. I held the line, right? I didn't do anything bad. And this guy's in trouble. This servant or woman is in trouble. I gave you enough to do something with. And he says, look, at the very least, you could have done some little something. You could have put it to the money changers and I would have gotten some interest. I'd be getting back a talent, a nickel, but at least I'd be getting back a talent. You would have done something with what I gave you. And the message here is for us. Yeah, it's time. I know that we can do something, no matter who we are, no matter what situation we're in, we can do something. And we go back to the beginning, and when I told you this idea of the body, and that we're here partly to strengthen each other. Each of us is given the ability to do something. And whether it's something huge or whether it's something not, I will tell you, they're not online this morning, Cindy and Paula. They send cards to people all the time. I see hands nodding. You know, they come put those silly elves on the front of our vehicle. And I'm at physical therapy, and somebody says, "Oh, look," and they saw my truck. "Oh, look, isn't that cute? It's got an elf on the front of the truck." And I say, "That's mine." There's someone from our Bible study that does that. And it may seem like a small thing, but to those of us who have received cards at just the right time, and Jack has done that, and you know, this is what we're here for, and we have different parts. Don't ignore it. Don't get so hung up in worrying about, well, you know, at the last minute, I'll make up for it. That's the lesson for today. And we'll talk
And
about
if you
some.
guys- if any of you are into Christian music, put on YouTube Casting Crowns, the hands and.
If we are the body,
What is it?
if we are the body.
If we are the body. And to me, it sort of sums up what we've been teaching today. And so we'll start tomorrow. We have one more parable that he's teaching the disciples before we start to the last 2 days of Jesus' life.
God, you put us in charge of things. You gave us these tasks, and we are humbled. We are grateful that you would consider us enough to do that, that you would consider us worthy of your notice. And I can speak for myself. Too often, I put off doing some of the things that it's my job to do. And I think others do. You know our hearts. But the message that you leave for us over and over again, we see that you've thought enough of us to spell some of these things out. And we're grateful. We're thankful. But the thing I ask for this week is that through this, through paying attention to this, you give us that reminder that when someone gets put in front of us, we remember. We ask for your hand on Kelly and her friend and the family. It's such a terrible thing that we almost can't imagine it or contain it. And you said that, you know, if we seek, we find. We seek, in this case, that comfort, that understanding that we know is possible through you, the peace that passes all understanding for them. Be with us, remind us, help us to comfort each other. Amen.
Amen.
Did you see everybody? Enjoy Sergeant, stay warm.
Let's have lunch. I think that we agree. I really do.
I know what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say is, it's kind of like what John Paul says. Don't